everybody, to episode number 6 of podcast. I'm going to be joined today by Dan Deegan, founder of Bridger Sales Systems. We're going to talk sales, his CRM, logistical background, possibly bodybuilding, a possible rebrand. So let's jump into it. How's it going, Dan?
Good, Alec. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
I have to say, I love the POD cast for podcast. I like that. And it's funny because I was watching the intro and I get it. And then at proof of delivery, I like that.
If you look at the bottom left, we got the little POD logo. So I was going through the rebrand and I was going through names, and a buddy of mine was like, man, it's staring right at us. POD cast. I was like, damn, man. But the tricky thing with it is trying to find it on certain things because it's just the word podcast. So I found that out later. It's a little tricky, but
I mean, it's funny. We were talking to a company where we wanted to integrate their product into our CRM and their SMTP, and I'm like, dude, do you realize how much you're gonna have to pay to get on, like to be searched in the engines here? Because like SMTP is a protocol, right? So it's like it was pretty funny, but yeah. Amazing what happens when you choose a name and you're like, okay, how do you manage that in a different world? But
yeah, so I've kind of stuck with the podcast asset based because the asset based at least is kind of differentiating the word podcast, but it's tricky to navigate. But how did you get into logistics? So from the start, I mean, what was your first exposure to logistics?
Oh gosh, being drunk in a bar, and I was 17 years old, living in Quebec, and I was on unemployment, and I was at a bar. I guess it was probably somewhere around 2:00 in the morning, and I noticed a guy at the other end of the bar that I just come off my third bodybuilding competition, and I noticed a guy that he was getting into it. I'd seen him at the gym. I'd heard and we'd had conversations in the past about, sometimes I can't get here, so I need to invest in a gym at home. And at that point, I had built myself a really wicked gym at home with all free weights. And I elected at that point in time that it was more important for me to have a few more drinks than it was to have a weight set at home because I had a gym membership. And long story short, in about 5 minutes, I sold him my gym set. And the owner of a logistics company happened to be standing behind me. Got half the money and he said half on delivery, and then turned around and this guy's like, we need to talk. And, you can imagine at that time in the morning as a 17-year-old kid, I wasn't right in my right mind, if you want to say, for lack of a better term. I was twisted and woke up in the morning, didn't who is this? Like, what the heck am I doing getting business cards at that bar? And then just happened to go back the next week, not realizing the owner of the company owned the bar. And he actually, very smart man. He actually used the bar as a recruiting.
I was about to say, so he kind of Wolf of Wall Street you. He saw your sales abilities and was like, hey man, we need to discuss this.
Yeah. And, it was funny because, so the next Thursday I went back. The next Friday I went back. So the first Thursday I went back about a week and a day later. And as soon as I walked in the door, he came flying out of nowhere and he's like, dude, you never called me this week. And I'm like, and I'm kind of looking at him like, who are you? And he looks at me and goes, I gave you my card last week. Yeah. And he's like, I gave you my card last week. So we immediately sat down. And it was interesting because this is the big part about people seeing the talent in other people that they might not see in themselves, right? I didn't have very much ambition besides bodybuilding.
You're 17. I mean, at 17, I started working too, but at that point, it's tough to see, business from that age.
Yeah. I mean, what are you thinking of in the future? Where's my next dollar coming from and how am I going to spend it, right?
Where does the next 2-4 come from, man?
Yeah, exactly. So that Friday night, he was like, listen, Monday morning, I want you at this office. This is the person you're going to talk to. And I remember walking in at 8:00 Monday morning, not really knowing what to expect. On my way to work, I had an old beat up red pickup. And on my way to work, I hit a pothole and the whole bottom of the truck dropped 3.5 to 4 inches.
I mean,
So it
just
couldn't
so
have been better
anybody
timing to get a
watching,
real
just
job.
so anybody watching knows your preference, what brand pickup truck was it? Since that's a hot debate.
Geez, that one I think was a Toyota. I think if I had to
Okay,
guess.
you
That
might
was
get
so
some
long
flack
ago,
for
brother. I mean, we're talking 30 years ago, but I think it was a Toyota. I just remember it didn't have a tailgate. It had a mesh, a piece of mesh on the
that. Yeah,
back.
with the two hooks on each side.
Yeah. And it was one of these things where I was like, well, I guess it's a pretty good time for me to get an actual job now that gives me steady income because, but I'll tell you, I pulled in the parking lot and here's kind of something that I think a lot of people get caught when it's in logistics, and well, not a lot, probably most. I saw the types of vehicles that were in this parking lot, and I was like, "Holy crap! There's
It's like the
money here."
boiler room, man. When he pulls into the brokerage, it's just Ferraris, Lambos.
Yeah, and I mean, it was so. And that office, when they put us in the pit, it was like the boiler room. Like it was
Yeah,
an exact replica of what the boiler room is. I mean, to the point where I vividly remember probably 2, 3 months into my career, being under my desk with my phone and the Harris directory, because that's how we got our leads back in those days, because the boys are playing football and like tackling each other in an office. Like, and so you can imagine, I think at that point there was maybe 15, 20 desks in this office. And like everybody's talking, the volume was just insane. Now,
yeah.
for somebody like me, I loved that atmosphere. And there's other
Right.
people that kind of retract during that
So
atmosphere, right? But
basically, you sold a gym set successfully at a bar very late at night, and the
yeah,
owner of a brokerage was there to see it. And upon arriving to said brokerage, you saw a bunch of luxury cars, a bunch of people, probably money flowing through that
yeah,
sales floor, and you were hooked. Eh? That was it for you.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, as a 17-year-old kid, listening to somebody say, "Okay, I'll pay you $7,500 for that load," and I'm looking at him like, "Did you just spend $7,500 in 3 seconds?" And he's like, "Yeah, but I'm charging my customer 85." I go, "You just made $1,000 in 3 seconds?" I'm like, "No way, no, that didn't." And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, 300 of that's mine. I'm like,
And
"You're
what
just
year is this? What year is this happening?
93."
Holy, so you're certified in logistics, eh?
Oh, brother, when I started, no cell phones. Um, Still had the rolls of paper in the fax machines. We hand wrote all of our dispatch sheets. Like there was I don't we didn't even have email. Like it was like yeah,
Like
it was
Raycon's going out in the fax machine, bro.
yeah. I think 3 weeks after I got there, I got an email address,
Okay,
right?
so
And
that
it was
was
it
your
was like just
introduction, and you were hooked from that moment. So
yeah, yeah,
from there, I mean, what are you doing these days? Are you still brokering? What's Dan up
yeah.
to present
So I
day?
actually, as of January, I got back into brokerage. So I've been off for a bit just because I got sick. So when I got better, when I was able to kind of withstand the entire regiment of what a day holds, I immediately got back into sales. And the reason I did that is because, here's one thing I can tell you, my man. I've seen way too many people promoted outside of their caliber. And I see way too many people go from salesperson to manager and then forget what it's like to be a salesperson and never keep their hands in the pot of sales. And when you don't, you very quickly lose track of how it works. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been to so many managers where I've been like, okay, did it? And they're like, yeah, but it works like this. And I'm like, 5 years ago, like, how long
Yeah,
has it been since you sold? And to try and get buy-in from a manager for things we need as salespeople or things we want to do. Like when LinkedIn Navigator first came around, I remember vividly speaking to my VP of sales saying, I need Navigator. And he's like, well, no, like, why would you need that? I go, like, this is how we find people. And because he wasn't in sales, he was a manager. He never used these types of tools. So he didn't know how valuable they were. So to
yeah.
try and sell them on $1,000 a year subscription was very difficult. And in the end, he didn't go
Even
for it
being a
because he just didn't believe in
salesperson,
it.
selling him was hard.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. And so I believe if you're in logistics in any which way, shape, or form, I do think you need to keep your finger in sales. And even if it's as simple as you know, talking to a traffic manager, talking to an ops manager, talking to a VP of logistics, and just having the conversations. Hey, what's happening in the world? Like, what's happening in your world? What are some of the difficulties? What are some of the things you're finding are great? What are some of the challenges you see coming down the pipe? Like, and this to me is everything.
I mean, I'm the same way. I always said to people, because I used to do a lot of hiring. I used to have an office where I was hiring dispatchers. And I mean, I was the manager, but I was dispatching trucks every single day because I agree with you. It doesn't matter in any capacity. Logistics is so fast that if you take 60 days, 90 days off, man, I don't know. I would even say in dispatch booking freight, like 30 days, you fall behind really quick. And like you said, your manager telling you how to do your job. Yeah, that was how you did it 2 years ago, a year ago, 90 days ago. But
You
I'm
know,
a firm
the
believer in
best thing
staying in the
to
market.
vividly give people the visualization of this is COVID. And you know, you look at what happened during COVID with salespeople. I mean, I know salespeople that were doing 110, 120,000 in their pocket every month during COVID. And I have the conversation with them now, and they're like, man, I don't even know where to begin in selling anymore. And I'm like, well, that's because you didn't keep up with it during COVID, right? Like you sat back and you let everything come to you. And I get it. I understand it. I'm not saying it's right, but I understand it because there was so much business. It was so abundant. You didn't have to be a salesperson. You didn't have to find solutions. All you had to do was have a truck and you had business and you were able to make substantial profits at it.
No,
And now you look at,
we had the same thing as a carrier when 2021 rolled around. You could pull anyone off the sidewalk and they were doing 15K gross a truck every week
yep,
because all
yep,
you had to do was just post a truck and wait for the phone to ring. But
yep,
long story, I'll make that story much shorter. I went to hire a guy and he quit after the boom ended. So he
yep,
didn't really understand how bad the market was. And he sat down in my office to do a test run and he opened up the load board and he clicked rate to sort by rate. And I just knew immediately. I told this guy, yeah, you could just go home because if you're sorting by rate, that was 2021 style. Now we sort by age because the only way you're getting freight now is to be the first person calling. So as soon as I saw that guy click sort by rate, I knew he fell out of the industry and he didn't know what was going on anymore.
yep. Because I mean, so you look at human nature, right? Majority of it, if we look at just how people operate as a whole, and this is nothing against individuals, it's just the way the human psyche works, is we typically learn something once, and then like there's one way to hammer a nail, when there's really a few. But once we learn the one way, we never bother to learn another way. And so, like in my sales training that I have, the majority of the conversations I have these days is, damn, nothing seems to work how I used to do it prior to COVID. I'm like, well, that's because it's a completely different
It's
market.
a different
So
job. It's a fully different
one,
job.
I love that. Yeah, that's so true.
I tell dispatchers all the time, I get people, a lot of people started quitting when it got hard, this and that. And people told me, like, give me some tips, give me this. I told them, listen, whatever you know about dispatch, just forget it and start fresh because every trick we used to use doesn't work anymore. We're not in control of the situation. The market is doing what it's doing. We need to relearn this. It's a new job 100%. Where it
Yep.
used to come to picking stuff and taking some time, the job evolved into speed. Whoever is faster wins the freight. And that it's just
Yep.
it's a new world. So
But you know, it's one thing that I said when COVID hit is I tried to scream it from the rooftops. If you're in sales, don't stop selling. Whatever you do, do not stop selling because you're going to
ABC,
be in a
man,
position you are
always be
today.
closing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, as awesome as Glenn Ross was, it's true. And you know, when I look at ABC, I say always be crafting a new message, always be crafting a new strategy, always be crafting, because what we craft today is typically the results in 90 days. You know, I remember when I was at a very large brokerage company, and I had about 120 27 sales reps under me in a couple of different offices, and I kept one of these outlandish spreadsheets. I mean, we're talking like 60 things deep by 20 things,
Like
like, and
a
it was,
scroll that you're starting to like
well,
unravel
I mean,
every
it was all formulas, right? So I just had to enter really one or two things, but every Monday it took me about 3 hours to update the spreadsheet because I would go through average loads, cost per load, profit per load. And I mean, I would do everything, sales calls, emails, everything, all the stats I could find, and I plugged them into this spreadsheet. And what became very clear was there was this big pattern that I was able to show my salespeople. And this was one of the big turning points for a lot of them, because you know it as well as I do. We come into work every day and it seems like this mundane, repetitive crap that doesn't get us anywhere, right? We can come in today, we can make 50 sales calls, probably get 49 answer machines and one person to tell us to go fly a kite. We leave today and we're like, man, I put all this out and I got nothing back. And what I was able to do was show them how planting the seeds came into growth here. And what I was also able to show them is when their productivity dropped off, what happened 2 months down the line. And it really changed the view salespeople have on the mundane tasks. And if any of you are kind of stuck in that process where you're feeling like you're coming in every day and doing the same thing and getting no results, read a book called The Slight Edge. One of the greatest books I've ever read on this topic, where you're in control of the stuff you do, right? And so, perfect example, I found getting back into sales in January, getting back into building my health, understanding my energy, and really creating that new normal for me. I realized that my workout time, I was not adhering to. And what I mean by that is I had a specific time that I would wake up and I would do it. But what happened is, because I was out of commission for almost 2 years, I felt like I was so far behind. So what happens? We start working right away and then we lose track of time, to the point where I put a chin-up bar in the corner of my office. And now what I do is I go through X amount of emails or X amount of phone calls and I go and do 30 pull-ups. And then I come back and I do it again and I go and do 30. So by the end of the day, 10 at a time. By the end of the day, in the morning, I do 30, midday, I do 30, and evening, I do 30. So I'm doing 60 to 90 sets of 10 pull-ups one day, chin-ups the next day. And so no matter what, even if I don't exercise, I am still getting my exercise because I've incorporated these small little mundane tasks into my everyday routine. Does that make sense?
I think honestly, I mean, I used to be, a high level athlete back in high school. These type of things, and I think I had that same feeling where I got into logistics and I started to get into a slump where it was like, well, I'm already far behind. I'm not as healthy as I would like to be. Let me just forget about going to the gym, forget about trying to fix it, and just stayed in that slump, And then I kind of got pulled out of it too, where I was like, man, if I ride my bike for 10 minutes or if I do like 20 push-ups, that's more. Like, that's 10 minutes more than I did yesterday. And every day, if I do 10 minutes, then at the end of the week, that'll be an hour. And I feel like you said those little building blocks where it's like, just start. That's the best advice you can give anybody. Just start whatever it is you want to do. Just start, because little by little, you'll get to where you want to go. But if you don't start, you're never going to get there.
Well, and logistics, I think, is the one career, and I'm probably biased because it's really the only career I've ever been in full time. But you look at construction, right? Perfect example. It's specific hours that you work. Now, they might be long hours, but it's specific hours. If you're working in an office, it's specific hours. Whereas logistics is one of those industries where it's 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
And what I found is I came off of my third bodybuilding competition, started at the brokerage. Within 2 months, I couldn't see my belt buckle when I sat down. And I walked in there with a full six pack. I was like 2% body fat. And it was one of these things where at that point in my life, I realized, okay, this industry can take over your life pretty quick. If anyone out there is in another industry that can do that, please, by all means, connect with me.
I mean,
because
it's
I'm
funny
still
to
yet
me
to find one.
It's funny to me because I live in Serbia and I don't speak a lot of Serbian. I'm working on it slowly, but I've figured out how to say sit, eat, and work, and then sleep in Serbian, and that's how I would describe logistics when I got into it. I was sitting, I was eating, I was working, and I was sleeping, and no movement, and that's exactly how you get fat, because you're just sitting and eating, and that's it. It's so sedentary. So
yeah, and you eat well too.
yeah. Oh, buddy, if you could see what I eat in a day, man, it's I'm surprised I don't weigh at this point 400 pounds. So I mean, I take my food very serious. But
I love food.
I mean, let's get into this quickly. What is the logistics life, and why did you do the rebrand from Sales Chatter? Because I know you from Sales Chatter. I was watching Sales Chatter. The branding was there. I mean, what's going on with the rebrand here?
So the rebrand actually came with a little bit of a perspective shift. So originally it was the High Performance Logistics Sales Podcast. Really long name. And I really wanted to help salespeople learn the high performance method of selling. And then when I started to, I'm going to say drift, call a spade, drift on the high performance aspect, because I was like, well, it's kind of like I want to reach more people. You know, my mission is to, this industry has given me everything I've ever had in life. And I feel like I owe the industry a lot more than what I've given. And so we rebranded to Sales Chatter, and it was just a general sales conversation. But in that sales conversation, I realized that we were missing out on a lot of key elements in the world of logistics. So when I rebranded it, actually, as of this week, as of today, it's been rebranded to the Logistics Life. And the reason being is I'm going to bring to the world, you know, what it looks like in the world of logistics sales reps, of carrier sales, of operations, of management, and how that world impacts everyone around us. You know, I can't tell you how many times I used to come home in the worst mood ever because things were happening in the business and things were going wrong. And then when things were great, you'd come, and it was like I was almost bipolar.
So happy, right?
Yeah. And it's like, and so I really want to bring that to the world. I want to bring that conversation out in people and say, like, what do you love about this industry? What do you hate about it? You know, like for me,
I think you hit the nail. I think you hit the nail on the
customers.
head so hard, man, when you said you felt bipolar, because when the market started shifting, I would go to work one day and I would cover 5 trucks in like 2 hours and it would be cool. And then I would go home, I'd be super happy. Then the next day I would come in and I couldn't seem to book a single truck. And it got to the point where I felt like I didn't know how to do my job anymore. This was the shift, I think, right around 2022, the start of 2022. And I was so bipolar. I would go home and just stare at the wall and just be like the maddest human on earth. And then it just kept happening for months and months, and the market kept getting worse. And then eventually it hit me. I'm like, I'm just going to do the best I can and learn as much as I can to improve my skills. And I'm not going to like let this industry dictate my happiness, because I love logistics. I love being a part of it. But it took me like a conscious, like I had to sit myself down and be like, okay, let's just take it for what it is, and let's try to improve ourselves rather than, you know, kicking rocks and saying, oh, this industry sucks, oh, the market sucks. You know, I think you can only really control, you know, your reaction to the situation. So
Response.
Yeah, I mean, the market
response, the reaction, the immediate response is thought through.
Yeah. I mean, it's always going to do what it's going to do. And I think the rebrand to Logistics Life is cool, because anybody who loves logistics and isn't in logistics just for a paycheck, every single one of us that's in logistics for the long haul and we see a future here, it's a lifestyle. Like logistics is a lifestyle.
100%.
It's not
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, logistics is 100%. It becomes a lifestyle. Like answering, you know, quoting some freight on a Saturday or a Sunday. That just becomes our life. You know?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have customers texting me on, like you said, on the weekends and just saying, hey, I just thought of it now. Monday, we need to do this, this, and this. And it's like, okay, no problem. You know, going to visit customers, going to their weddings, like all of these things, it originated in logistics. Like I've met some of my best friends through logistics. I met my wife through logistics. She sold the company I worked for satellites for our trucks. Like this is what I'm saying is logistics is a lifestyle. You're absolutely right, brother. And it's that lifestyle. And if you notice, the people that really succeed in this industry are ones that have adopted the lifestyle and it became a career. Like there's a huge difference between a job and a career, especially in logistics, right? It's that constant evolution. It's working with the industry. It's understanding the industry, and our industry changes every second. Like it's crazy. So you really have to engulf yourself in it.
I want to clarify.
I
want to clarify to anybody watching this or who watches it back. I'm not promoting that you have to work 24/7, 7 days a week. That's not what a lifestyle means. I mean, logistics is a lifestyle. It is going to bleed into your free time. It isn't an 8 to 4 job. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be, don't look at it like, oh, it's so much work, I have to make it my lifestyle. No, you don't. You just have to let it integrate into your daily tasks and learn how to be a little more mobile. You have phones, you have internet, the world is connected. You can answer emails at the gym. You're not tied down, to a phone landline. So, I mean, it's a lifestyle. And I think if you want to stay in logistics, you got to find the balance and how to have your life and still be available to the industry.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I remember when I first started.
Speaking of meeting your friends in logistics, here's one of my friends I met in logistics.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Thanks, Darren.
Yeah, you met him. He did a demo of your CRM with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I met him. I met him through logistics. I talk to him every day. It's literally one of my best friends.
Awesome guy. I love his ink. It's and yours too, brother. You got quite a few going on there, I noticed, as you're moving around. It's, here's the thing is, when I first started, there was no cell phones. There was no email. I mean, I think I was one of the first people being in troll as my lifestyle.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you. That's
it's all good. It's all good. When I first started, I was in the office at 6 because I started soliciting like PEI in Nova Scotia and all those areas, which were an hour and a half ahead of me. And then I was in the office till 8 o'clock at night soliciting California, because the world wasn't as connected as we are today.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't really imagine this industry. I mean, I'm fairly new in it. I mean, I've been going like 3-4 years. I can't imagine doing this job back then, because all of the things that make logistics attractive to me is the fact that I can do it from anywhere, anytime I want, as long as I have an internet connection. And I think that I wouldn't love logistics the way that I do if I couldn't pick up my phone or laptop, walk out the door, and still do my job. I think I wouldn't love it the same way that I do. If that was
because you're used to what it is today. Like, if you had started in it, then you wouldn't know any different, right? Like, I remember when I got my first black. I had one of those. I don't know if you even know it. It was kind of this big, except it was a keyboard with a screen that was about 2 inches tall, and it was like, and I went, "You mean I can get emails when I'm not in the office?" And they're like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Oh, this changes everything," and immediately, like, your thumbs are now like superhuman because they're just going a mile a minute. And then very quickly, it was a hindrance, because no matter where I was, somebody expected an immediate
response out of you.
Yeah. So then I had to train my customers, and for all of you customers that are watching, sorry, but yes, I had to train you, that when I didn't reply, it was okay to contact my ops team. And I think for most logistics professionals, and I don't know about you, but for me, the biggest thing to overcome in this industry was to give up my business to somebody else. And what I mean by that is, like, the company that I worked with, what had happened is, the deal is, you would work cradle to grave, book your own trucks, do your own tracking, tracing, everything, until you hit over $5,000 a week, over $20,000 a month for 3 months straight. Then you'd get an operations person. Now, you start in the industry, you build your business over, call it 6 to 8 months to a year. Then you wait 3 months to get an operations person. So call it 12 to 16, 17 months. You've been dealing with the same people over and over. It is so difficult to give that up to an operations person, because they don't work the way you do. They don't work in the manner you work. They don't work at the speed you work. They, like, you say things a certain way and they say things another. And that, for me, was probably the biggest thing I ever did in this industry, was give up that to my operations team. But after I did, it became great.
I think in the same breath, my biggest fault as a manager of dispatchers was, like, you hit the nail for me. It just, like, it hit me like it stung a little bit, where you're like, you say things a certain way, they might say things a different way, and both ways could be completely fine, but it wasn't my way. And someone would send out an email say I was busy, they'll send out an email like, why would you send it like this? You should have worded it this way. And I think my biggest fault as a manager was delegation, and being able to, that feeling of letting go of a situation. I felt like I just couldn't let go of situations. I mean, I learned, obviously, that was the beginning few months, but I agree with you there. In logistics, like that feeling of letting somebody represent your name, it's tough. It's tough. Tough.
I mean, I think that's the biggest thing in brokerage, and is putting my image, credibility, and brand on somebody else's truck.
Yeah.
You know, and when we really look at that, I mean, to me, that was the biggest hurdle of the brokerage world, was when I choose ABC company to represent me and they screw up, I have to accept responsibility for it. Because I mean, I'll tell you, Alex, for probably close to a decade of my career, I would pass the blame. Oh, it wasn't my fault; it was their fault. And I remember
the carrier sucks.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, you'll never see that carrier again. When I didn't give the carrier half the information because I didn't want them to deny my load. You know what I mean? Like again, let's be transparent, right? In the first part of my career, I was taught a method of all means necessary to get the load covered. I can't tell, and it's embarrassing for me to say, but I can't tell you how many times I didn't give the carrier all the information they needed to do their job properly, and then blamed it on them when things didn't go right.
You know, I would give you a hard time about it, but you're one of the only people I've ever talked to that would openly say, yeah, I did that stuff, because most people are doing that stuff and hiding the fact that they're doing that stuff. And when I make like some LinkedIn posts, people get on my case. Oh, I hate brokers. I hate brokers. Buddy, if I say something and you're offended by it, I bet you're doing the same thing. I bet you anything that you are doing these shady things and you're too afraid to admit it. And that's the thing, I'm not going to give you a hard time about it, because you're going to come out here and say, you know what, I was taught to do these things. I had to do them. That was the company's expectation. I don't work there anymore because I don't want to do those things. And,
look at it like this, okay, Alex? So 2 years ago, I got diagnosed with cancer. So I had to take a step back from the industry to beat it and recover. And so I did that. And so in January, when I got back into it, the first thing I said is, this is so hard. Like, I'm 30-year vet selling. And I'm saying, like, whoa, time out. This is like nothing I've ever seen. And I sold during the 2008, 2009 fallout. Like, I've been around the block. I've been around the block for the Canadian US dollar dropping and plummeting out of the sky. I've been around the block for 3 recessions now. And I'm telling you, this is the toughest time in logistics ever.
See, I'm happy you've said that now, because you have 30 years experience. I've been saying that, and people are like, oh, you have no experience. You don't know what you're talking about. I have literally said those words. This is like historically the worst it's ever been. I mean, you don't have to have 30 years experience to be able to analyze data and be able to go back and see the rates in the 90s and the early 2000s. And we have so many tools now that you don't have to have that much experience to understand things if you want to do the research.
You could literally become an expert in a week.
This is really easily
you can turn yourself into a market expert in a week. Easily.
So let's get into this then. Let me set you up to tee you off on this topic. It's the same topic. How is sales and logistics different now, let's say, versus 2 years ago? What makes this, as a sales rep, what makes this so tough?
So here's a couple of things. And number one, if you were to ask me this prior to COVID, my answer would be different. But number one is shippers, manufacturers, I believe, still have one of the worst tastes in their mouth because of what logistics companies and carriers did during COVID. Yes, costs went up, but costs did not go up from $3,000 to $20,000 for a container. Cost did not go up from $5,000 to $12,000 to move that load. It just didn't. And we know it. And all of you that are being honest with yourselves,
I'll openly say it for every carrier out there that's too afraid to say it. I personally was dispatching during all of that. I personally was taking advantage of the situation. I mean, I was in a company, you had to do that. Your boss would get on your case. You booked $6 a mile instead of $7 a mile back then, But even at the end of the day, like, we 100% were taking advantage of the situation. Like, we had a guy that had 7 loads in Chicago, And we told him, I have 7 trucks for you, but guess what? You're going to pay us. It was insane. I can't remember. It was like $5,000 for 400 miles, 7 times. And he had to give us the money, you know? And somebody got back on the phone with him and was like, actually, it's going to be an extra 200 on all 7 of those shipments. And carriers 1000% took advantage of that situation. I'll say that.
I think most people did. And, you know, so if you go back to 2018-19, right? And this is the first, 2018 was the first year I recognized how the market takes advantage. So if we look at ELDs and the introduction of ELDs into the US, okay, for about 2 to 2.5 years, the majority of carriers were already on ELDs, okay? Mainly because they wanted to integrate their fleet, they wanted to make sure they worked, and they wanted to test them. So if we look at like a lot of our, I mean, in Canada, our carriers, our large carriers are not very large with considering US numbers, right? But I look at our large carriers, 96% of our large fleets were already on ELD. I personally believe, yes, ELD was a kind of holy crap, what's going on in the industry. I mean, even to the point where I had customers calling me saying, I just had team drivers pick up, they're both stuck because they both logged into ELDs at the same time. So it was an understanding on how it worked, right? Yeah, I know. And this was the thing is, we had told the company, so this was a Magna company, and if you know Magna, they're like the largest automobile parts manufacturer in the world. And I remember saying to my guy at CamSlide, I was going, okay, you need to pay attention to ELDs. He goes, no, I don't. We're Magna. It's never going to impact us. And within a week, he called me back. He's like, okay, it's impacting us. And
can you teach me how this works?
Yeah. And so, but if you look at ELD, right? So we come off 2017. Rates in 2017 were equivalent to 2013. So even though inflation's going up, rates are going down. 2019 hits. Rates get jacked, sometimes some 100%, some 200% increase, right? What happens in 2019? 2018, all these carriers jump into the market. Then 2019, capacity outweighs the freight volumes. So it drops. And lanes like Toronto, Montreal, which are typically a 1,200-mile lane, are going for $350 because somebody will take it.
It's
and
just the
this
same
is what
cycle.
we're in right now.
I know it's the exact same cycle. In 2021, everybody heard you can make $1 million. You just buy a truck. Everybody bought trucks. Nobody planned correctly. Now we have way too many trucks, not enough loads. That's literally the exact cycle that occurs every single time. And then now we're at the part where we're waiting for enough of these people that have no clue how to run a carrier to go out of business. Then we're going to revert back to not having enough trucks and having too much freight. Then it's going to go back to carriers gouging everybody. And I don't think unless we all learn to like cooperate with each other, unless greed can be removed from this system, which let's be honest, we're humans in capitalism, that's never going to happen. It's just going to be a cycle of abuse on the spot market. And that's the only way you can avoid that is just to build your relationships and your pipeline and your network of your carriers or your customers. Because the spot market is just going to be backstabbing for God knows 100 more years. We're going to have podcasts in the year 3000. They're going to be talking about backstabbing each other on the spot market. It's just not going to go away.
You know, here's the thing: if you play in the spot market, expect to get wheeled and dealed on rates.
Yeah.
Like it goes hand in hand. That's why it's the spot market. Right,
hey,
like
I just had a guy post a load for
trucks for your customer. Expect to get one rate today, one rate tomorrow, the next rate, and it's going to go up and down as they deem fit. If your customer's in the spot market, expect them to give you the lowest rate they got in the last month as the normal rate. Right? I remember dealing with a company that it was in health food, and they said, okay, well, rate to Chicago is $1,100. I'm like, $1,100. I go, when's the last time you paid that? Oh, like 2 months ago, I paid a lot. I go, how many loads have you moved since then? They're like, oh, probably 40 or 50. I go, so what? Why? Well, that's what I would like to pay. And just because they got it from the spot market, for somebody who is, you know, and I've been there. We've had, when I was at my asset-based company, we had 37 trucks when I first got there. We went up to close to 100. And we were dealing with Dell Computer, Microsoft, you know, Apple, the big electronic companies coming inbound. So we were getting $8-9 a mile inbound. So I can afford to go out for $1. So don't get me wrong. I was that guy at one point where I said, okay, I'll beat that just because I needed to get where I needed to go. So I artificially deflated the cost to get trucks somewhere. So I get that 100%. But the industry as a whole jumps on these bandwagons. And I think that's what needs to change. You know, before deregulation, it was like, this is the rate. And now what you're doing is you're competing on value. What else can you bring to the table? This is the going rate. What else can you bring? And to me, that's where we're back at. I mean, if you look at the amount of CVORs purchased by companies this year,
100% we're there.
Yeah, I mean, you look in the last 12 months, how many CVORs were purchased by companies? It is like never before seen that so many companies are buying their own trucks because they're saying, I'm not getting caught like
it's
this.
It's not even worth it. Yeah. No, but I mean, listen, this is how it goes. Like you just said, that's exactly where we are at with all of this. It's like, this is the rate for the load, the lane, however you want to say. What do you bring that the next guy doesn't bring? Because the rate's not going to be it. Nobody's going to, eventually you can't go lower. And at that point, you got to bring value as a carrier. You know, how do you communicate? Are you on time? All this kind of stuff. As a broker, you need to provide, you know, better service. You need to answer your phone longer than the next guy. And at this point, we're not discussing rates anymore. I mean, the rates have basically bottomed out. They still manage to trickle 1% down every week, it feels like. But we've kind of bottomed out on the whole rate thing. Like now we're all just chilling and waiting and seeing who can provide the best service and how to build your relationships to kind of avoid this in the future. But if you ask me, I feel like the rates have bottomed out. I mean, every Monday it feels like we're 5% worse than the previous Monday. But I don't see this continuing much longer. I think I was optimistic 2024 would be a like somewhat recovery and we'd start to float back to the mid 2 per mile. But I'm starting to think 2025 is going to be.
So I think by Q3 and Q4 2024,
I think it's going to be an interesting
winter.
I think it's.
I mean, if you look at just the amount of carriers from January, February, and March,
out of business,
right? Yeah, January there was a delta of 96, close to 9,700. February was about 2,900, and then March was 250. Yeah. And we're talking delta from people leaving to people coming in, which means the market's starting to flatline. Now, what is the variable that we haven't faced in a market like this, even in 2018, was a soft freight market, meaning shippers got a lot smarter at how they ship during the pandemic, and they're bringing it into here. I mean, I can tell you, the majority of people that I speak to from a cold perspective are saying, you know what, Dan? Yeah, right now I'm not looking, mainly because I'm about 30-40% down on my freight volumes. And I'm looking to take care of the carriers that were there for me when things were tough. So I think two things. One, manufacturers, shippers, you know, all of our customers, I think they have realized for the first time that if they do not set their supply chain up properly, they can lose a ton of money real quick. And I don't think we ever had that in the way we had it during the pandemic. Like even 2018, it lasted for about 8 months, right? Never 2 years of just astronomical cost, absorbent amounts of money being spent. Like I have one customer of mine, he went from 0 to 1.5 million square feet of warehouse space outside of his facilities. Now you do the math, 1.5 million square feet of warehouse space at $2 to $3 a foot. How much is that on his logistics or supply chain budget at the end of the month? Like he said, Dan, for the first, my company's been open 55 years. For the first time, they did not make any money. The first time in 50 something years, just trying to keep their supply chain going. Like that's insane. Insane.
I mean, let's get away from the doom and gloom. We could talk, you know, analytics and we could project what's going to happen. Nobody has the crystal ball. So let's move into a topic that's actually healthy and good for us to talk about. You've said, I think today, health is wealth. You mentioned, I mean, multiple times, even on today's show, that you were a bodybuilder. My last show, I just interviewed Nick Balls, and he told me he was a bodybuilder. I mean, he still is, I think, currently a bodybuilder. I asked him this question. How do you think the bodybuilding mindset helps you in the logistics industry?
Dedication and focus for number one. You know, sales is one of those careers where you get beat down every day and you got to pick yourself up. And I think that's a lot like bodybuilding. You know, bodybuilding, you got to wear your muscles down, you got to tear them apart to make them stronger. You have to be very disciplined, like in bodybuilding. So there's a point before bodybuilding competitions where you literally got to shred down and then carb up. So like there's a point where when I was doing it anyways, it was like 100 carbs an hour for 18 hours. And you're just shredding at this point. And you still have to muster up the energy to work out, to do your cardio, to do everything. And all you're doing is you're starting to burn the fat. And then you have to literally dehydrate yourself. So all your veins show and everything. And all of this, it's so easy not to do. And it's hard to do and easy not to do, meaning I'm just going to take that, you know, I'm going to go 400 carbs this hour, or I'm going to eat 2 oranges instead of 1. And it's so easy to skip out on the processes and the formula that really works, right? During off season, it's all about bulk. So eat whatever you want, gain your mass, and then you shred down, right? So there's these growth seasons and shredding seasons. And I think same thing in logistics, same thing in sales in general. It's real easy not to do the mundane things that really make the big difference. And we don't see it today. Like you can go 2 days on shredding down and you might lose 1 pound, you might lose half a pound, but you continue to do it for 2 months prior to the competition. And that's when you see everything is about compound interest, right? So the more it compounds, the higher return we get, right? Somebody starts exercising today and they do a couple of sit-ups, a couple of push-ups. They're not going to wake up tomorrow and look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that's the problem with us as a society right now is I want to do 10 chin-ups and I want to be back in my 21-year-old prime of bodybuilding. It doesn't work. I'm 47 years old. It's taken me 47 years to get to this point. It's going to take me a long time to get back. And in sales, we tend to scale up, coast, scale up, coast, scale up, coast. And so definitely the discipline, the mindset to continue going in the face of adversity, you know, like think about it, right? You train for close to 8 months specifically for that competition and you lose, right? Like you put everything in and you lose. It's like, okay, next year I'm coming back stronger. Next year I'm coming back stronger. Next year I'm coming back better. Next year I'm coming back better. And as a bodybuilder, we would have to pull out the nuggets, right? I would go into the competition, into the green room, and I'd be watching all of the people in the green room. I'd look at their physiques. I'd look at what they're doing. I'd look at how they're warming up and how they're pumping up with a towel. And I'd be looking at that. And I'd be saying, okay, you see how his shoulders and go into his bicep? And I look at mine, I'm like, I need more shoulder, less bicep. So you're looking at everything around you to get the secret components to help you do more. So the way you would reference this back to sales is on every call, no matter what it is, I have 2 philosophies. I move forward or I learn. And those 2 philosophies have helped me succeed in sales. So move forward. What's the next steps, right? We agree. We like each other. What's the next step? Number 2 is, hey, Dan, I'm not interested. Well, what does your supplier do so well right now that you're not even willing to hear what I have to say? Or what has stopped you from wanting to hear what I have to say? And if they engage with me in that conversation, I've now got a learning point that I better damn well adopt into my business.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with the bodybuilding where it takes, you know, a bunch of small things. And I think the problem in today's society and I guess logistics, you know, as a whole is we're all, Nick said the same thing. We all want instant gratification. We all want the clicks and the likes and the instant dopamine. And I think people lose out on just doing the mundane things, you know, following up on emails, making check calls, doing like those little things. And that is the fastest way to separate yourself and provide good service in logistics is just following up on emails, you know, sending out a call to a driver just to say what's up. And it's all those little things that add up to great service. And that's the things that you separate yourself with. I mean, Nick says this, I'm sure you guys both know this better than I do. I've never been a bodybuilder, But the last
Yes,
2
Nick, you are so right, man. Those
last
last 2
2
weeks, brother. Like I remember sitting there after the competition, like no, about 2 days before the competition, and saying to myself, "Why am I doing this to myself? Like, what? Why would I do
Why
this?
am I even
I'm
here
getting
right
up
now?
on
Why did
stage
I
in a
do this?
speedo." Yeah, I mean, there was no money. There was a trophy, so it was bragging rights with the boys in the gym on the caliber that I was doing it. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, why am I really doing this? But he's right. It's where the men are separated from the boys because they will continue to do the mundane, and then when they get on stage, you
Yeah,
see
yeah,
it.
yeah. No, that's what
Yeah,
Nick said. He was saying like, just go do hard stuff. Just go lift some heavy shit, man. Like it'll just help you all, like in your life. If you're physically healthy and you're challenging yourself physically, your mental health will follow. Like
yeah.
you don't really like even Dan the Driver Rose said this. You don't see a lot of guys crying riding a bicycle. Like you don't see a
No,
lot of unhappy people on
I
bicycles.
love that. Yeah,
I thought about that too. Like you ever see a guy riding a bicycle and he's just in a bad mood? Like no, you've never
yeah,
seen that.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
if you want to really get a good idea on what you just said, where it's like do the hard, do the stuff that really. There's a great podcast with Andrew Huberman and David Goggins, and they actually
David
talk.
Goggins. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that man is just like he is the guy that says like I'm going to do everything that's so tough because it actually builds pieces of your brain that help you do tougher things. The tougher you do things, the more difficulty you have in something you're doing, the more difficulty you want to do the next thing. And there's actually scientific results and proven studies that Andrew Huberman talks about in that podcast with David Goggins about how doing the hard things actually makes you like a way
Just
more
like,
productive person, and it
yeah.
leads to degrees of success
I
that you
mean,
cannot do if you've never
I
faced the
always
hard
think
things.
about it like this. So I used to do a hard job. I was like digging holes. I was a drain layer, and every that's like a war in Canada because it's in Canada. It's -30 every day. The ground's 4 foot frozen. But that's like you're going to war every day. And I used to think
Yep.
like this is what the human body was made for. To do these hard things. And I watched some documentary a while back, and they were saying that comfort is the killer of man because now we're just too comfy, man. We have nice chairs, we have air conditioning, and we're not used to doing these hard things. And it's you either use it or lose it, man. And if you don't
Yeah.
get moving, you don't do the hard stuff. I mean, comfort really is the killer of man. And even if you want to relate it back to logistics, like you said, most salespeople, they get successful, they build a book and they coast. And some young guy comes in and he starts working his ass off and he's going to provide better service. And if you coast and you're comfortable, that's where, you stop getting better at things.
Yep.
But let's get into the topics we have at hand with your CRM since we're kind of hitting that 1 hour mark. So what is Bridger, if you want to put it in, a quick description?
So Bridger's the last 30 years of my sales career, never having the right vehicle to help me make $1 million in GP. I had to build the vehicles in every single company I was at. So what we did is I've been training salespeople since 2016, and my mission's always been to help 10,000 sales reps generate over $1 million GP in under 12 months. And with that, I watched as thousands of sales reps came in for me to train, few were succeeding. And I couldn't understand why, because every strategy, every tool, every structure, every framework I used to do 3.87 million in GP was what I was teaching everyone. And I was giving them every single piece of the puzzle. And I realized very quickly that you can have every single piece of the puzzle, but meaning you're going to go climb a mountain. You can have every single piece of tackle. If your vehicle breaks down halfway to the mountain, you're never climbing the mountain because you're just not getting there. You're not getting there to be able to use the tactics and strategies that we did. So what I did is I built a CRM dedicated to logistics sales reps in the way we sell and how we sell quoted, qualified, closed. And what we started doing was we started adding tools to it. So industry rate tools, AI tools, such as company research. So now I can click a button and research companies in 30 seconds instead of taking 10, 15 minutes. On average, people using Bridger save 8.67 hours a week, which is totaling just over 6 weeks a year. So you gain a month and a half back of actual prospecting
just
time.
Work time, yeah, it just comes
to
back.
work time. Instead
Well,
of
let's get
doing,
into it. Let's
was
do
to
it.
a point where I stopped researching because I was like, this is bullshit. I'm wasting so much time. I may as well find out if you're interested in speaking with me, and then I'll research your company. So it's just things like this that really.
Hey, I mean, you're the first person. So I'm not qualified. Obviously, I'm not a broker. Never been a broker. I'm not qualified for these things. However, I was running my previous podcast with my partner, and we were interviewing a bunch of people that were in sales and shippers and brokers, and so I know a little about the topic, just from secondhand information. This is not firsthand. I've never done it. But you're the first person that's actually said the opposite of what everybody comes on the show and says about sales. They say, every shipper I've ever talked to says, research, you better know everything about me before you call me. And you're the first person I ever heard say, hey, let me call you and see if you even want to give me the time of day ever before I go do all this research. I think that's
why.
I would like you to explain it, because you're the first one that's ever said that.
I don't sell freight. I sell image, credibility, and brand. So my entire sales philosophy is I don't give a shit what you move. And I don't mean to put that in a rude way or an ignorant way. Freight is freight. It all gets moved the same friggin' way. I don't care if it's an oversized load with OD and escorts, or if it's traveling at certain days. Or
if you simplify freight, it's just something from point A to point B. That's the simple part.
It is. And my value is I'm available 24/7. Everybody's available 24/7. My value is I pick up and deliver on time. Well, you better pick up and deliver on time, or you will not have one customer, never mind 4 or 5. Oh, well, my company's best. We have 30,000 carriers in our database. That just tells me you play on the spot market way too much as a corporation. So every single thing that we and I realized so quickly when I really started to scale my business was I can't sell freight. If I sell freight, I'm commoditizing myself just like every other sales rep that's spoken to them today. So what I started doing was I started selling image, credibility, and brand. So I don't care what product you move, because I'm confident enough in my business and my value that I bring to the table, where you give me a day and I'll understand it to the T and probably know more about it than most shippers. Okay. So that's number one. And I don't mean any kind of ego with that. That's a hard fact. I will spend 18 hours researching it to make it real. I think
people need to understand, sorry, before you go on. People in logistics, I think people in logistics do the whole lawyer thing where they want to feel important about something and they want to make themselves feel important. When you break down dispatch, when you break down moving freight, it's at its root, it is so simple. I mean, this is an industry, like you said. If you tell me I got to go learn about this type of freight, I'll figure it out, in 18 hours. People want to feel important, and they want to feel like they're the only ones that can do something. And they use all these big words and all these abbreviations. And when you break it down, at the end of the day, you're clicking buttons to book freight. You're finding, pallets, you're putting them in a truck. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. However,
they use too much techno babble.
Good at stuff, It's easy to learn, tough to master this industry. But anyone who thinks what they do, no one else can figure it out. I mean, come on, it's moving freight.
No,
let's be serious.
But here's the thing, right? What is the number one motivating factor ever?
Money.
Status. Not money. Status. Part of money is status, but the overarching concept is status. And
money,
and here's the example, right? Yeah. So you look at status. So it's either raising your status or lowering your status. Those are the two only drivers that we make decisions on. Is it going to raise my status? I'm in. Is it going to lower my status? Yeah, maybe not. I'm not into it. So I have a buddy of mine, very successful, owned his company for 35 years, like super wealthy. His dream car was a 911 Carrera. He buys one. He comes to grab me one day because my car was going into the shop. So I said, would you mind meeting me at the dealer and just bring me to work? He says, okay. So he shows up. He's not in his Porsche. It's a beautiful day out. I go, why aren't you in your Porsche? He goes, oh no, I'd never bring that to work. I go, why? He goes, oh, all my employees would think I make too much money. I go, you've owned a business for 35 years. Your house, your entire life savings, everything was on the line for you to start this business. Who cares what other people think? He's like, oh no, Dan. So he went out and spent like 150 grand, 200 grand on a car that he doesn't even want to drive because he's afraid it'll lower his status. Like, think about this for a second. People that say, "Oh, are you going through a midlife crisis? You just bought a Corvette." Well, no, idiot. I can just afford a Corvette at this time in my life, and I've always wanted one. But you see, it's this perception that we have of this idea of status. If we hear a sales message, and that sales message is, the way you have your logistics set up right now is bullshit. I can save you more money. And if I'm the one that set up that logistics network, I'm never going to buy that product or service. Why? Because you're telling me I'm an idiot because you have a better. So when you call shippers up and say, "I got a great way for you to ship your freight, and it's the bomb, and it's the best," you're telling them they're an idiot for the way they set up their. And
no, you
have no idea how they're set up. You don't even know if you can do this.
I've heard that word for word from at least 3 shippers that have said, if you call me and tell me you can save me money, you're calling me stupid, because now you're telling me that I'm losing money because I don't know how to do my job.
Exactly. Now, flip that around. The shipper that walks into a board meeting, and the board members or the managers meeting says, "We have this issue," and he says, "Hey, I got a guy I think that can figure it out." And everyone at the table says, "You know what? You make the right decisions. You're always looking for the right people to get the job done. Go for it. No red tape. Go for it." That's status. That's credibility. That's a personal brand inside a company.
If you could give,
that's what we all want.
If you could give a tip to new brokers out there, new salespeople making sales calls in a quick, 1-2 tips, what should they be saying to shippers versus what they shouldn't be saying? We've discussed what they shouldn't be saying. What does a Dan Deegan cold call look like?
So I actually, my entire cold call is focused 100% on them, not their product. Okay. What are your goals this year? What are some of the downfalls some of your suppliers have right now that might hinder you from achieving it, that you can see? Because there's always gaps, always. And I want people that treat me as a resource and know that I'm in it for them, not a necessary evil. I was having a conversation with somebody last week, and they said, "What's the first thing you ask?" And my first question is always, "What's your primary and secondary reason for adding or switching a service provider?" Yeah. And some people might say, "Well, Dan, isn't that selling freight?" And I don't think so, because what I'm doing is I'm getting into who they are as a person. What are their beliefs? They say price and service. Guess what? I know price has a much bigger value than anything else in their company. So now I go from a qualifying question to a clarifying question. Then I say, "Well, what do you mean by price?" Because I want to understand. If you look at, I'm a golfer, you tell me there's a putter out there that's going to guarantee me 9 strokes off my game, I'll max 3 credit cards out to get it, because just the ability that, the status of crushing my buddies on the golf course means more to me than money.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
I like that you broke down status, because you're right. Money is the motivating factor, but if you break down money even further, it just leads you back into status.
Everything does. The vehicle you drive.
Everything. I got a quick story for you. That's hilarious.
In your company.
I got a funny story for you about the status and cars thing. So my grandmother has a friend, and he's a younger guy, and he picks her up to go shopping one day, and he has a brand new BMW, beautiful car, And then they end up going back to his house, and she goes to his fridge, and there's nothing in his fridge. Like, no food, no drinks, nothing in his fridge, nothing in his house. And she asked him, like, "Why do you have this expensive car and you don't even have food in your fridge?" And the guy told her, "Well, everyone can see what car I drive. Nobody can see what's in my fridge at home." And that was just one of those, like, status things. It's like, it doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, you look at different areas of the globe, right? So, like in Europe, for example, like in England, right? They entertain in pubs, so their houses are small. In Canada, we typically entertain at our houses, right? So when I lived in Montreal was all about vehicles, right? Because we would go to bars and entertain. We wouldn't necessarily go to houses. So everywhere you go, and every pocket across the globe has a different thing that they focus on. And that's status, right?
Yeah, you're actually
like drove a BMW.
You're just like a really educated guy, like smart guy to talk to, like just like that. I never thought about that, like they entertain in the pubs. So why do you need a big house? Right? England has I love England. I'm very interested in the UK and their media, and I love that place and their soccer.
Well,
But
I
you're
mean,
right. They have
so think
small
of
houses.
Europe in general, right?
Pub culture.
Europe in general, an Audi is not necessarily a status vehicle, right? Whereas you see somebody driving down the road right now in an S7 or something, you're like, "Wow, nice." But in Europe, it's just an Audi.
Yeah, like
German think
cars.
of that, right?
German cars here are so common. Like you see BMW, Mercedes, Audi, everyone has one. They're cheap. They're cheaper to run than most Honda Civics were back in Canada. Like parts are right there. Germany's right next to us.
Exactly. So
you're
status
right.
is different to everyone. Everyone. You know, I look at in my vehicle, I don't really care what the logo is on the front. I care about what I have inside. So, for example, my tech is number one for me in a vehicle. Can it technologically keep up with me? I love tech. I love all the new tech, everything. And so for me, I don't really care what it looks like. All I care about is, does it function while I'm driving, and does it give me everything I need at my fingertips?
So I'm gonna hit you with the tech question since you're a tech guy. What's inside your computer? What graphics card do you have? Do you play games at all?
No, I
Okay.
don't. And I don't.
No
I have
graphics.
no video games on my phone. I have no video games on my computer. I run
Deegan just
all my
bleeds
stuff is
sales.
legacy
He
top of
just
the line.
bleeds sales. That's all this guy does is think and bleed sales. No video
So
games.
I love coding. I'm obsessed with writing code and JSON and Java and HTML. I love building websites. I love video editing, video creation, and I love tech in general. The more
I just got
can
back
get
into the
tech,
video editing. That's like I used to love doing that back in the video editing is awesome, man. But let's get into this. What's the biggest block you have you found a logistics rep has to achieve their goals? So every logistics sales rep is going to come in, they're going to want to make $1 million. They're going to want to start cold calling. What do you think is their biggest roadblock right off the bat?
Their biggest roadblock, without a shadow of a doubt, is the vehicle. The vehicle they're in. If you want to climb a mountain and you jump on a big wheel to try and do it, you're never getting there. So no matter how much effort you put in, you will not get there.
How did you find out that the vehicle is the biggest issue? How did you see people going wrong?
25 years of trial and error. 25 years of saying, I have the best system. I'm dedicated. Every day I'm dedicated. I'm doing everything I need to do, and things fall. I'm doing everything I need to do, and I lose sales leads in the CRM abyss. I'm doing everything I need to do, and I'm falling here. I'm dropping here. I'm seeing a gap here that I can't bridge, or I don't realize it's there, and then I fall into a cavern. It was literally decades of burning myself out time and time and time again, just coming in and saying, okay, you know what? I didn't hit it this month. I'm going to double down on my activity next month, not realizing that I lost 6 sales leads that could have given me $100,000 GP at the end of the year because my systems couldn't keep up to my productivity. 1000% the vehicle. If you are dedicated and you are doing everything in your power, meaning you're doing the mundane, you're doing things, and results are not happening for you, it's because you're in the wrong vehicle to get to your destination.
So here comes the next, it's kind of a double-sided question. Why is a CRM needed for a freight broker? I mean, that's kind of simple. You need a place to organize your thoughts. I've never used a CRM because I don't need it as a carrier. I definitely have a small carrier. I don't really need it. I keep track of all my stuff in my personal files. I even understand this question now. You need a CRM, especially if you're doing cold calls. If you're burning through 200, 300, 400 phone calls in a week and you don't have a nice place to put it, you're going to lose track. So why do you need a CRM? I'll answer that. You need one. But the second part of that question,
pretty much. I mean, you need one that works for you, though. There's a big difference between a CRM.
The second part. That's the second part of the question. A lot of people dislike their CRM, and or a lot of people are in a company that forces a CRM on them. What is the common complaints? What do people not like about their current CRMs? What is the issues with them?
They don't help themselves. So they don't help them achieve their goal. So the typical view of a CRM is I've got a system put in front of me that helps my manager keep track of me. That's really what you ask most salespeople, they're like, yeah, my CRM is just so people think I know I'm working, right? No, there's so I've tried almost every CRM on the planet. I've tried all of the big names that everyone knows. None of them help you sell. None of them have functionality in it that helps you get more done in less time. All of them are bulky because they're catering to generic markets. And trust me, there's big money in software. But when you're catering to the general public, you have to have every single little tool that person in real estate might like, or person in fitness might like, or person. Whereas when you're going very strategic and very specific, it's designed for you in the way we sell. And that's why I believe we need specific tools for specific jobs, right? You were in construction, you dug holes, right? Okay, so if somebody hands you a flat face shovel in the middle of winter, okay, you're going to look at them and go, you've obviously never dug a hole before.
You've never dug a hole before in your life.
In your life, okay? So somebody hands you a flat spade shovel or a flat shovel, not even a spade, and says, okay, go to work. You're going to look at them and go, okay, where's my pick? Because I got to kick the ground up a little bit before I even try and put a shovel in the ground. Better yet, go get me a backhoe. Let's do this right. That you're trying to like slay a dragon with a pen.
But that's going to lead that's going to lead me into this question. What is your favorite feature about your CRM? Or a few. I'm not going to limit you to one feature. But I mean, what does your CRM solve for a freight broker that's in sales?
I love that. So our CRM is designed as an all-in-one system for freight brokers. So it has about 17 different training courses. It has reference letter templates. It has email templates. It has cold call scripts. It has everything. We do data day inside of it. It gives you all the data. We've included, probably a 3 gigabyte knowledge base in it. So literally you can say to the software, okay, when's produce season in California? And it'll start spitting out all the information. You can have all of your research tools done for you in seconds. I mean, I love the syntax portion of it through email, where I can create one style email and it'll be turned into 100.
Did you say there's cold calls scripts in the CRM?
Yeah. So we took high performance logistics sales. So I've built 15 courses over the last couple of years for sales reps, from 28-day challenges to bulletproof ideal client profile mastery, all the way up to selling something else master classes. And we put it all in there. So what happens inside our CRM is, as you work through and continue working through your processes, the intelligent piece of our CRM says, hey, listen, you have X amount, you have $200,000 in stuff you've quoted, you have $800,000 in qualified, but you have $100,000 in closed. You've got 2 gaps you need to fill. Try these courses. And the system picks up on the tasks that you've created, and it starts bridging the gap. Hence the reason we called it Bridger.
Yeah, I mean, Nick's saying, he's never heard of a CRM with email templates, cold call scripts. I mean, that's just never been heard of. Like I said, I'm not qualified on these topics since I don't use a CRM. I did, however, put you with a friend of mine to demo it, to tell me that it is a very good software, which he told me it was. And here you are, and here's our conversation.
So here's what I'll tell you, Alex. You get a CRM, you'll double and triple your output. Hands down. No joke.
Hey, I'm not going to argue with you about it.
It's reality.
I'm not going to argue with you about it. I'm really young, but for some reason I'm a dinosaur. I'm set in my ways. I have my Excel spreadsheets. I showed actually, so I can't. I'll show it to you after. My CRM is an Excel sheet, and it's spread randomly, and each color means from high importance to low importance, and it's organized chaos, but it works for me. I promise you, it works for me. I should probably get a CRM one of these days.
We can go at this all day because I've been there. It doesn't work.
I mean, let me go with this then. How does a setup process look like for you? Since obviously there's some interested people watching this. How long does it take to get rolling in your CRM?
So our CRM on average has about a 1 to 2 day learning curve. Very visual. It's a very visual CRM. You can go to bridgersystem.com and get a 14-day trial. You can experience all the courses. You can get the cold call email script, the cold video script, everything. We got video messaging built right in. We got all sorts of really cool tools to help us, the logistics rep, really build their business from a learning curve from beginning to end.
Does it record phone calls for you?
No.
No,
And the reason being is to record a phone call is actually illegal unless you
the
tell the person they're
legalities.
being recorded.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's
So,
what
I mean, you look at that and we thought about it. Like we're looking at transcript things where it takes a transcript of a conversation and puts it into notes automatically. So we don't have to type anything, that kind of stuff. But again, you're running into legalities, right? Not to mention, here's one big thing I've realized is I used to record phone calls and I'd start the conversation with Mr. and Mrs. Prospect. I'm recording this call just for my own purposes, and it changed the conversation.
Yeah, the whole
people
tone
don't want to talk, right? They don't want
Yeah,
to
they
talk.
don't, and especially in this day and age of like cancel culture, like people are like really worried about what they like say on the internet these days. So no, I get that. So getting integrated with you, that doesn't take much. That's like an hour of time. You're up.
No, and it's free onboarding. You can book an onboarding call with me directly. I'm the type of owner where I'm always wanting my hands in the pie, and I'm always wanting to sit with people and really, the way onboarding works for us is very simple. What are your challenges right now? Because you can learn 1 to 2 to 3 things in a CRM, like in Bridger, that will dramatically change your results, and then we can learn the rest later. Let's address your problems first.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges? This is your challenge. Okay, this is where you go for this. Just focus on these for the next 3 days. Your output's going to triple instantly. Now you've got that done. Now we'll move to step 2, 3, and 4. Because we jump into things as humans. We jump into things. We're like, oh my God, I don't know about you, but I'm like Hanny and over the hedge. Like I see something shiny and I'm like, ooh, and then I'm going from here. And I really need to hone in my focus and say, so I focus on one thing at a time and I become an expert. Like when I got sick, my voice box and my voice does not last for more than 2 hours now in a day. Otherwise, I go, all of a sudden I just start talking really low and I just can't project my voice. So for me, I had to switch how I sold. I couldn't cold call anymore because I would only have literally half a day's worth of productivity. So I had to stop and say, okay, how do I get really good at email and DMs and video messaging? Because I can do a 1-minute video message and schedule a call for later this afternoon. So then as I look at my calls scheduled, I can adjust my sales appropriately. So I had to get insanely good at email to get the same results as cold calls.
Yeah, of course.
100%. And you try and tell somebody everything you want to tell them in under 50 words. It's very difficult. Okay. Yeah. Like some people are like, oh, email, it's the easy way out. No, it's not. If anything, like if you want to just spam and carpet bomb the shit out of everyone, yes, it's super easy. Anyone can do it. And I've seen them, trust me, because you probably get them every day like I do, where it's like it's a book. And not in a million years am I reading past 2 sentences.
I'm not investing more than 10 seconds into like a pitch slap of a person I've never met before. Like that just is what it is. If your DM is longer than this big, I am not reading it. If we've never spoken before.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. And I mean, it was actually the funny thing you say that the email is the easy way out, because on LinkedIn you can post, novels if you want, and on Twitter X over there you're like very limited. You got to make much shorter posts. And so you see a lot of these people on LinkedIn that are posting novels and they're struggling to make the point in less words. And we even had Reed, who made a whole post about this, was like, if you can't get your point across in 2-3 sentences, then maybe you need to like figure out, it's much harder the less words you have. But that leads
68% of emails that are 30 words or less get responded to.
Yeah. That leads me
because it's easy. I can read it in 2 seconds. You're not taking up my day.
Yeah. Where do most of your customers get their leads to import in your CRM?
We have a built-in lead generation in the CRM. So you don't even need, like, it cancels your Zoom Info account. It cancels your Seamless.ai account. With our subscriptions, you get up to 250 leads a month. Plus, you can buy extra credits. So literally, you can go choose your industry, select logistics as title, hit search, select 250 people, put them in your system, put them into a sequence within 3 clicks.
Hey, so it's funny because I just heard that word. So Zoom Info. I was told by a friend of mine recently that said there was a CRM coming out. They're like, if they don't have Zoom Info, that's probably not going to be a great CRM. So can you counter that point? Why do you need Zoom Info? Why do you not need Zoom Info? Are you confident you don't need it?
So here's what I say when it comes to, and I'm not going to say Zoom Info. I'm going to say companies like Zoom Info. So Zoom
Yeah, like
Info is just
I'm not knowledgeable. I'm not trying to get anyone in
generation.
trouble here.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
I'm just
Listen,
spitting
no,
things
I mean,
back
like,
out.
listen, Alex, it's like HubSpot, it's like Salesforce. Like we have people that came from Salesforce in Bridger who are like, this is the cat's ass. It beats Salesforce hands down. There's people out there that just heard that and they're like, bullshit. Salesforce is a multi-billion-dollar company. You guys are a startup, right? So everybody's going to have
Oh,
their different
yeah.
reality. Genius AI, Apollo, Zoom Info, Uplead, all of these companies are just B2B lead generation company, right? So what do they do and why are they important? So number one is time. I can go in and I can say construction in Dallas, Texas. And in 3 seconds, I've got 400 companies in the area that I'm looking at soliciting for construction material. Done. I don't have to go to Google and say construction in Dallas, Texas, and filter through 12 different pages. I can just go click, 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 done. That's where lead generation is the bomb. Okay.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that come with that is you go to certain companies that are on the market, 50% of their data is bad. So you spend half your time deleting leads or finding new emails now for me, who does most of the email, I got to make sure my emails are on point because if I get 15 bounces in an hour, it's going to affect my health of my actual domain. Right. So then I continue to do that. I'm actually, in other words, I'm going to be considered a spammer, and companies like Google are going to say, well, you're going to the spam inbox. Now my customers are not going to get my emails. So you have to be very careful. So what that originates with is really concentrated good data, right? So we in Bridger, we have an entire course on how to do proper lead generation in our system. So again, it's not just walking in and saying, here you go, figure it out. It's walking in and saying, whoa, time out. Take the 20 minutes and watch this video because this will give you back 3-4 hours a week. So it's a good ROI on your investment, right?
Yeah.
And that's where CRMs fall flat.
I just had that same conversation with somebody. We were talking something about logistics and business, and if we could do something a little faster. And he told me straight up, he was like, "You're gonna save. You have to because you have to sell this to a company one day, some carrier company." And he told me you're gonna save each chair in that office 11 minutes a week. Nobody's gonna buy your product because they don't care about those 11 minutes a week. But if you can come in and say, "I'm gonna save each chair 2 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours," then you're going to pique a lot of interest. Like you put it in those terms, a month and a half of productivity you get back. When you say to somebody in those words, they're going to, okay, where do I sign? Here's a blank check, you know? But when you come in and tell somebody else,
something that's interesting though, Alex, is yes and no. And I say that because certain people enjoy doing the research because that means they're not getting denied. They're not getting rejected. They're not hearing no. So in actuality, for some people, it's a fault saying, oh, you mean you're going to give me an extra 6 weeks back where I get people telling me they're not interested? I don't know. And it's crazy, but it's true because you look at it and you say, you're in sales, right? You're a logistics salesperson. You are a commission salesperson. Commission sales is the best job on the planet, hands down. Why? Because somebody like me who's got a grade 9 education can make more than a brain surgeon who has to spend $200,000 on school and go to school for 9 years of their life, right? I'm a commission salesperson. I can get off a plane in any country in the world and find a product I like and sell it. And within a relatively short period of time, be right back on top. That's commission sales. But
I mean, you're literally
if
Boiler Room, Glengarry, Glen Ross, and Wolf of Wall Street was a person, I think you are that person. Like you're literally that person. And I think honestly, if people don't know Glengarry, Glen Ross, and they come on here and they say that they're a salesperson, I'm just gonna instantly discredit them. Because I was bringing that up, and people didn't know what I was talking
Glen Ross
about.
was like the first really awesome sales
movie. I mean, I have Darren to thank for that because he put me on to Boiler Room and Glengarry Glen Ross. Because, like I said, I'm not a salesman, but he put me onto those movies, and I finished Boiler Room the first time and Glengarry Glen Ross back to back, and I was like, I want to be a freight broker. Like it just hit me so hard to do that.
So here's one thing I've heard you say this probably 6 times just in the hour and a half that we've been on. So you are a salesperson. Everyone is a salesperson. Right now on this podcast, you're selling yourself.
Fair.
So you're actually giving yourself a discredit right now by saying you're not a salesperson. If you're in operations, you're in sales. If you're front facing, you're in customer service, you're in sales. Sales is the largest industry in the world because every single piece of a company touches sales. So if you're a parent, you're in sales. If you have a spouse, you're in sales. If like, I can go on and on and on and on. The commissions are just different. As a spouse, your commission is love, honesty, integrity, respect. As a parent, you're like, we have to sell our kids on certain things as they grow up, and we have to sell them on different aspects of it as they raise that bar called age. So you are in sales, and you're doing yourself a very big disservice by saying you're not, because what you do every day is selling. And the better you do it, the more money you make for your company.
I just think it's funny because you get a lot of these LinkedIn influencers, and like what you had said at the start, you know, where if you want to sell something, you have to be doing it. And I think the biggest problem I have on like the influencer community is these people have not a lot of experience. They aren't doing the job today. And I got into a fight with a really big person recently because I told them, you're not doing it today. I don't care if you were doing it for 14 years. I don't care if you're doing it for 500 years. You haven't been doing it for the past 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. I don't trust you anymore. Your experience basically lapses over. And I mean, you can use your 15 years of experience, and I'm sure you're going to have a head start on the people doing it today. But guess what? You're going to come back in here day one. You're not going to know nothing. And I think that the community needs to understand you don't need 50 years of experience to have any credibility. I've been doing this. I'm getting close to the 4-year mark. I will go toe to toe with anybody about carrier relations, carrier things. I'm a carrier. That's what I know. I will talk to anybody out there about being a carrier. I love being a carrier. I love my owner ops. If you love something and you research it and you put your time and your passion into it, you will excel much faster than somebody that's been doing it 50 years, hates his life, hates his job, he does it for a paycheck. Your 40 years, your 4 years, it doesn't matter because you can put different amounts of intensity into that time. And time is not a guarantee of knowledge, and knowledge is not a guarantee just because you've been doing something for a long time. And I think that
I know salespeople that have been in the industry for 25, 30 years and they haven't sold in 20.
Yeah. Like,
they've been coasting, and
especially in logistics. Logistics is so fast. But this is going to be the final question that I have on paper for you. What reporting and visibility does your CRM have for activities and pipeline generation?
So we actually have a gamified system. So the entire system is built in the gamified process for dopamine drips. Our engagement system is very unique, and also on the manager side, it's very unique. So what we do is engagement is done via tasks. Everything in the system is a task completion. So at the beginning of the day, you have all these tasks on your screen. At the end of the day, the screen's blank. Dopamine hit, big, kapow with confetti and stuff. You've done your day. We actually then translate all of that back to the manager side, where the sales rep is no longer tracked. It's activity management. Because here's the thing: there is no such thing as time management. You can research it as much as you want. Time management doesn't exist. People like to think it does, but it's activity management. How much time is this activity going to take me? And if I put X amount of time into this activity, what's the ROI? So all of that is monitored very closely inside Bridger and displayed in a visual process for the rep to look and go, last week I screwed the pooch. I didn't do very well. I should have probably done better, because the week before that, I rocked it. And then we get to bridge our own gaps. Because here's the thing. You've heard it before. You can lead a horse to water, you can't get him to drink. If the horse is thirsty, the horse is going to drink. So you look at people that coast. They get thirsty when they lose a customer and it jeopardizes their lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's really what it's all about, man. Yeah. We create an income for ourselves, either via commission, via salary, via whatever. We live with this income. Then all of a sudden we start creating more income. Our lifestyle equates to that income. Then it drops, and it's like, I don't want to lose this status again. We go back to that status. And so I need to get more income to maintain that status. Now, whether that's a personal status, the fact that I want to go away every 2 months on a $10,000 vacation, or I want to invest for my future. So every month I want to put 2 grand away for my future, or I have an RESP and for my kids. Like all that status is different. So some people, it's if I can get enough money to put my kids through college, that's status for me as a parent, right? So status isn't necessarily just the vehicle or whatever. It's whatever means the most to you. Like I remember my first coach said to me, I said, I'm doing this, this, and this. He says, okay, pull up your bank account. What? He goes, pull up your bank account. I go, why? He goes, I want to see what you spend your money on. You tell me you do all of this, but what do you spend your money on? And now you go look at my bank account. So much of my income goes to education, to building me as a person, building me as a human. I read a book a week. I write, I have agendas, I have planners, I have diaries, I have like this is for me is everything. If I don't read it,
into yourself,
I feel like I'm disconnected.
Hey, but I like that. It's not time management and the illusion of time management. It's activity management. Like people want to say time management, but at the end of the day, all you're managing is activities. Like that I'm going to start using that too, because you're not managing your time.
So like
you're managing how many activities you can do and at what time you can do them.
100%. So let's talk about productivity for 1 second. I know we got to go. So inside Bridger, we can do automated sequencing. Okay. So we've seen people inside Bridger going, we can do automated sequencing. Perfect. I don't have to do any more work. So they do automated sequencing. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, I have emails going out because I have automated sequences happening in my system so I can speak to you and reach more people. So I could speak to you. So when somebody goes and Googles me, they see, oh my God, Dan's not only walking the walk, he's talking the talk. So I'll come out straight out and say, yes, I use automated email sequences, but I also do manual email sequences, and I also do X amount of phone calls a day. So I'm using automated sequences to double and triple my output, not to be my output. And that's the big difference. We have this AI. I mean, AI. Everybody's going to ChatGPT and they're going, they're like Bruce Almighty when he's typing, and they're like, oh my God, yeah. And then they get this email and they're like, oh my God, that's awesome. They send that thing. They're like, why doesn't it work? Well, because it's not you. It doesn't sound like you. So yes, do I use AI every day, all day long? But I use it as a starting point because I learned very early in my career. It's easier to edit than it is to write.
I mean, that's the thing. I was just having this conversation with Nick about AI right at the end too. And it was like, AI is a tool. It is the same as a hammer. It still needs a human hand behind it. It is not a person. It is not how you run business. It is just another tool in the toolbox. And if you're not going to take advantage of it, you're going to fall behind. But at the same time, if you think AI is the answer and it is your business, you're also going to fail, because that's not true. A hammer needs a human. Every tool needs a human to make it work. 100%. And AI is just another prong of, that situation.
Yeah. Like we put something in Bridger where I started to really learn about AI and started to build out actual tools, like things that actually help the sales rep succeed. So we built out a tool in Bridger where it's the corporate LinkedIn, the personal LinkedIn of the person you're looking at contacting, their website. And then you give a little brief 1-sentence description about your service and what your call to action is. So to fill this process out takes about 12 seconds. Okay. You hit go. But 10 seconds later, it spits out 5 different introductory emails or DMs for you to connect. So in 30 seconds, I've got 5 different introductory emails. I copy, paste, change a few words, hit send. Again, it's easier to edit than it is to write sometimes.
Hey,
I don't know about you, but some days I walk into the office and my brain is foggy as hell. Like,
no, it's funny you say that. It's so funny you say that, because all of my content that anybody watches, I write 100% all of it. I don't use AI for anything. However, I've just got into video editing, and my software wanted me to pay $300 to get the feature to make AI generated subtitles. And me being, the type of person that I am, I found a way to get like AI scripting. So I run a script now through Python, and I get a script that makes me AI subtitles, like in my program for free. And it's all scripting. It's all internal scripting. and it uses like, I think Microsoft Whisper AI. And long story short, I just go and I edit if there's a mistake with the AI. But the AI is very good. It doesn't make a lot of mistakes. But like you said, it's much faster for me to just edit 1 or 2 mistakes that they made of my subtitles than for me to sit there and put the subtitles, which I would never do. So
like here's another way for you to do it that might save you a little bit more time. And again, this is just functionality. Go to Descript. Just upload your video. It gives you all the subtitles you need. You click a button saying add it to subtitles. There you go. Like, right. So like, I mean, there's all these different tools that you can use to save that time that you might be doing. And again, this is what it is. That must be a bourbon. No, actually, I was a trained professional up until about 12 years ago, and then I haven't had a drink since. So,
yeah.
But yes, I used to be
staying away from drinking too. And also, Kristen was talking about your giant graph paper, which is hilarious to me because the first time I ever saw a video of you on my timeline, the only thing I could look at was the graph paper. I think you actually had something written on it that day too. And I was like, oh,
this camera and this graph paper is where I record 99% of my courses.
Yeah, it's the best. Like, it's the best setup.
See, when you draw it, you draw them in.
Well, let's go through the final last question I have for you, sir, since my trucks might need me in the next 10 minutes. Can you share some of the results you've seen from reps that adopt these strategies and basically your CRM, some success stories?
Yeah, so the latest one and the latest one that we've had is the 8.6 hours a week of savings with the research tools we have built in. A second one is a lady in the US who works for a very large company in the US that does agents. She came into the business in 2023, mid-December 2023, and she's already doing 30 grand a month.
Jesus.
And just because she's doing the mundane thing, she took the 28-day high performance sales challenge. She's starting Inception, which is another major course inside the software. And it's changing her perspective on how to sell. She came from real estate. So she's used to hustling and go-getting, and she's starting to work a lot smarter. And Elsa is just crushing it right now.
I'm going to go through and
two of the latest success stories.
Everybody watching. I mean, I know your product has a stamp of approval from a good friend of mine. I'm sorry I haven't personally used it, but maybe, you never know what the future holds.
Hey, I really appreciate. I say this. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate your time, man. Like I said, I've seen you around a lot. We haven't talked much. This show went over 40 minutes because you're just so fun to talk to, man. You're just an interesting guy. I like your energy. You're highly educated. You have an answer to every question. You're easy to follow. I loved having you on, man, honestly. And if we can run back a part 2, or if we collaborate on something in the future, I just want to see more of you.
Let's do that. Let's do that. Why don't you come dance on my show? We'll talk about your logistics life moving from Canada to Serbia and how that has impacted you and what you see there.
2 fellow Canadians.
Yeah, man. When you said Toronto, bro, you're in Toronto. I was like, no way. Are you in Toronto? Because if you are, I said, we're getting together.
So Dan sends me his phone number, and his phone number starts with an area code that's like famous from our city. And I tell him, there's no way you're from the city in Canada. I grew up there. And we didn't even know each other before we got on the show today. But you would think we've been friends for 10 years. Our chemistry is
hey, it's the way it works, man.
Hey, jump off of here for me, Dan, and go buy a poutine. Please go buy a poutine for me. I'm missing poutine with all my heart, man.
When I moved from Montreal to Toronto, I tell you, I missed the food huge. And I can imagine what it's like to move from here to
I thought about starting a poutine business in Serbia. That's how much I miss it because nobody knows what it is. And I think they would do great here. So.
Oh, yeah. A little gravy, a defibrillator on the side, just in case.
Hey, I mean, Serbia is a heavy alcohol country, and poutine is a drinking food, so they kind of go hand in hand.
There you go, man. There you go. Yeah, let's do that. Right, though. Let's get you on the logistics life, and then we'll get back on here for sure.
Yeah, man. I appreciate your time. Thank you for everything, Dan, and we'll be seeing each other.
Man. All right, my man. Take care.
Thank you for everybody who commented and watched episode 6. It's been fun. We went over 40 minutes. Dan's the best. I would recommend him just to everybody who watched this. That's like one of the most educated people I've ever spoken to. And he's just so cool and calm. And the energy behind him is great. And that's a wrap on episode 6.